Imagine a tool so powerful it can see through your clothes. And not just see, but then simulate acts you never ever consented to. Sounds like something out of a dark sci-fi movie, doesn't it?
Except it's not fiction. This is the reality we're all navigating right now. A reality where the very boundaries of our bodies, our intimacy, and our consent are being dissolved and redrawn by simple lines of code.
So in this explainer, we're going to dig into the powerful social forces that are driving this new world. We're going to explore how exactly AI is learning to desire and what that means for the future of our society.
You know, the lines between who we are, what we feel, and the tech we use are blurring faster than ever. So today, we're going to dive deep into the social impact of AI. We're going to look at how it's completely changing the game when it comes to power, our most personal connections, and even our digital bodies.
And really, this one question is what this whole conversation boils down to. It's a question that makes us face this bizarre new world where we're not just being seen by other people anymore, but by these incredibly complex systems that can look at our image, recreate it, and even manipulate it.
And look, this is not some far-off sci-fi future. This is happening right now. These are real things that are pushing back on our most basic ideas of consent, privacy, and what it means to be safe. It just goes to show you this algorithmic gaze, it's not just passively watching. No, it's active, and it has some really serious consequences.
Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to break this all down by looking at it through 5 different angles. First, we'll talk about power and data. Then, what happens to intimacy when you can automate it? After that, we'll see how AI can actually make old forms of violence even worse. Then we'll touch on what all this does to our ethics. And finally, we'll wrap up with the really tough questions we should all be asking ourselves.
All right, first things first, let's talk about power. Because let's be honest, in our digital world, power is all about surveillance and the mountains of data that come from it. So, to understand this, we have to start with this key idea from the scholar Shoshana Zuboff. She talks about surveillance capitalism. It kind of builds on this old idea of the panopticon. You know that prison where inmates behave themselves because they think they might be watched at any moment? Well, surveillance capitalism takes that idea and puts it on steroids. It's not just about watching us to make sure we behave. It's about actively digging into everything we do online, every click, every like, every photo, and turning our experiences into a product that can be sold.
And that right there, that is the big shift. The goal isn't just to control what you do in the physical world anymore. It's to control your digital self. That AI that can undress someone, that's a perfect, chilling example. It takes a person's actual image and forcefully reshapes it, turns it into an object for an algorithm to consume, all without their permission.
But this power to reshape who we are online, it doesn't just stop with our public image. It's creeping into the most private parts of our lives, our relationships, our feelings of intimacy. So what happens when our emotional worlds become the next thing to be mined for data?
This is what we're talking about when we say synthetic intimacy. Think about all those AI companions and chatbots popping up. They give you the feeling of a connection, right? But it's an imitation. It's intimacy that's been engineered. It's been stripped of all the messy parts, the hard work, and the real responsibility that comes with a genuine human relationship.
And this is exactly what gets lost when we go down that road. When you can buy connection like a service, the emotional work just gets outsourced to a machine. Social interactions get, well, sanitized, and our feelings become just another deal, another transaction. What you're left with is a kind of intimacy that might look real from the outside, but is totally hollow on the inside.
So here's where it gets even more complicated. These systems aren't just creating brand new problems. They're also super effective at taking very old problems and cranking them up to 11, especially when it comes to gender and power.
Okay, so the sociologist Pierre Bourdieu had this term, symbolic violence. It's a way to describe how inequality can start to feel normal, like it's just the way things are. AI-driven exploitation is a perfect modern-day example of this. It takes the social hierarchies that already exist, especially around gender, and writes them right into the code, making objectification seem like it's just harmless fun or some kind of fantasy.
And you absolutely have to remember this quote from the feminist scholar Donna Haraway. It is so fundamental to all of this. An algorithm doesn't just magically have biases. It learns them. It inherits them from the huge amounts of data we feed it, and from the very people who build it. And our digital culture is already soaked in these logics, including a whole lot of patriarchal ones.
And this is what that looks like in practice. When a user can just type a prompt like, strip her naked,
The AI is basically reenacting a long, ugly history of the male gaze and objectification. It's not creating anything truly new. It's just automating and scaling up a very old form of symbolic violence and then repackaging it as fantasy.
Okay, so if the tech is moving this fast, and it's already tangled up in these really deep social problems, what in the world happens to our shared sense of right and wrong?
If you think about it, in the past, our moral compass was shaped by institutions we could actually see and argue with. Things like the law, our families, our schools. But today, more and more, those boundaries are being set by private tech companies, hidden behind thousands of lines of code or buried in a terms of service agreement nobody reads. You end up with what one sociologist called liquid morality, where our ethics can change as fast as a software update.
Which brings us to the biggest challenge of all. In this new reality, whose job is it to teach these incredibly powerful systems the difference between right and wrong? I mean, who teaches a child talking to a chatbot to recognize when that machine is crossing a line? The scary part is, right now, there are no clear answers.
So, the most important thing to take away from this is that there are no easy fixes. Instead, we have to start asking ourselves some much tougher, much more critical questions.
I mean, really think about it for a second. If your digital image can be taken and manipulated and used in ways you never, ever agreed to, what does consent even mean anymore? Where does your control over your own body and identity even begin or end?
And as we've seen, this technology is anything but a neutral tool. So we have to keep asking, how is it being used, whether on purpose or not, to make the inequalities that already plague our society even deeper?
And finally, this is about the path forward. What does a solution even look like? How do we build guardrails, through laws or education or ethical standards for the people designing this stuff that can actually protect people without just slamming the brakes on all technological progress?
Because at the end of the day, this is what's really at stake. Looking at the social impact of AI isn't just some abstract academic thing. It's about us actively shaping a future where technology actually serves our dignity and our empathy instead of chipping away at them. It's about making sure that as our machines get smarter, we don't forget what makes us human.